the former Lexington Catholic star who played at Miami of Ohio for 2 seasons, is coming home to be a Wildcat. I was kind of stunned by this. It kind of came out of nowhere. There was an online rumor kind of floating around in the past 12 hours. And then Matt tweeted some stuff all the way from Scottsdale that he was hearing it might happen. And now we have a 13th player on the roster. This is wild. So, Zach, I'm going to throw it to you as our resident basketball Benny. Tell us all about Reece Potter.
Yeah, it seems like this came together within like 24 hours or something. I felt like Reece had been in the portal since like March 24th, I think is what it was. So he'd been in the portal for almost 6 weeks at this point. But I will give, I think it was Big Blue Bud. I'll give him a shout out. He kind of had it first on Twitter last night. And then Jacob Polachek found out that there was real connections this morning. And then boom, just kind of all came together at the last second there. But yeah, Reece Potter, I watched this kid play a bunch when he was at Lexington Catholic. I was trying to see if I'd tweeted about him before. And I had one tweet about Reece Potter. And it was from 2022. Lexington Catholic played a game against, can anyone guess?
It would be Reed Shepherd,
Boom.
North Laurel.
Oh,
Reed Shepherd and North Laurel. And I think Lexington Catholic won that game. When Reece was there, they were really good. I think maybe his junior year, they played Malachi and Great Crossing and won and made it to the Sweet 16. I think their senior, they ended up losing before going to the Sweet 16, something like that. Maybe lost to Great Crossing as well. So this kid's been around for a long time. Obviously, a Lexington native, 7'1" center. He probably weighs as much as I do right now, which is that'll be another thing to address later, is his actual physicality and how it'll translate. But you've got a guy with 2 years of Division I experience playing in Miami, Ohio with the Redhawks. He's put up decent numbers as kind of a backup off the bench there for them. He actually played alongside another Kentucky native, Evan Ipsaro, yes, who was kind of like Reed Shepherd's unofficial rival when they were both seniors, because he was at Covington Catholic. Reed was at North Laurel, and they met probably 3 or 4 times that year. Covington Catholic was really good. So there's multiple Kentucky connections there with Reece and his time at Miami. But Pope saw an opportunity to add a 13th guy who's a 7-footer and kind of be their practice player. I think Roush, you said it perfectly in our group chat. He's just a good player to have in practice, another body to have, especially with Quayton still going through all of his rehab, and who knows whenever that's going to be end up. He'll be back healthy and whenever. So having another big guy out there who can actually play and be viable and not tank your team if you have to put him out there in kind of a last case scenario, it's very interesting to see him come on board. So we'll see if he ends up being a redshirt guy or whatever they end up doing. But I guess it's not bad when you can add a 7-footer who shot 39% or something from 3 in his 2 seasons at Miami, kind of on a lower volume, but as the highlights are going by here, there's not many highlights on backup centers from Miami, Ohio, if you're on YouTube, but the guy definitely looks like he's got a quick trigger on his 3. That was one of the first things I noticed in this exact 1.5 minute video that I watched earlier. Got a quick trigger on his 3, plays a lot of the top from the top of the key, hit some nice backdoor cuts. So I think you can kind of imagine what Pope is thinking here. Okay, I've got a 7-footer who's got some playmaking chops, averaged over assist a game last year, playmaking chops, can shoot from 3. We'll see how it all translates to the SEC and if he's got the size and the skill inside to be able to compete. But you're not going to find any better 13th man in the country than a 7-footer in your own backyard too. So we'll take the addition.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny sometimes just to think about this time last year, we were still in the middle of core roster building. Oh, see, cheers to that. Cheers to Reece. And now we're talking about adding the perfect 13th man to the roster. So it's a good position to be in. And, Pope teased this last week. He did that really long, in-depth interview with John Rothstein and said he was going to add maybe 1 or 2 more players to the roster. So
scouring the planet.
And really he just had to look in Lexington. Yeah, look in his own backyard. So funny how that works. And, of course, if the house settlement goes through, teams will be allowed to have up to 15 scholarship players. So there will be no more walk-ons. Previously, it was 12 scholarship players, 3 walk-ons. So with this news now, Kentucky has 13 presumably scholarship players on the roster. Like Zach said, we'll see if this guy redshirts or not. But at the least, they've got somebody else to go up and practice until Jaden Quayton comes back. So, Roush, what was your initial reaction when you heard that Reece Potter is a Wildcat?
You mentioned 2 things that haven't gotten a lot of run. One of which is the house settlement ever going to settle? I thought we were doing this like 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So that still being out there is weird to me. But I will say we talked a lot on the football side of things about how much it would hurt their practice without walk-ons just because of the lack of good reps. And I know that people don't get all in a fuss whenever you lose walk-ons to the basketball program, but you need those players because there's a good chance you're going to be down 2 at any given time. How many times was Kentucky 3 or 4 down this year? You still need to be able to practice. And unlike the women's game where you have 5 or 6 guys who are just kind of rotating in as practice players, you can't really do that. So I thought that part was the biggest thing for me. And then 215 pounds.
He is tiny.
I mean,
7'1".
So I was the ultimate guy back in the day where I couldn't put on weight for nothing, right? Like it was like, gosh, Roush, eat something, and my mother was like, dude, you're eating us out of house and home. What are you talking about? You're eating so much food. But I can at least somewhat relate to being the person who can't put on weight. Not anymore. That's no longer a struggle anymore. But I do wonder at what point will he hit that? All right, we're leveling out, right? Because if you add 20 pounds, that doesn't sound like much. Like that, you wouldn't even notice it if a 7'1" guy gained 20 pounds. So adding that, I think, will be crucial. And then, as much as I don't think that we got so accustomed to be like red shirts don't exist in college basketball, this is one where it would make sense. We saw Louisville do it with Ali Khalifa a year ago. Wouldn't be surprised if that's the case here because the way you're looking at the roster moving forward at the center position is this year it's BG and JQ with Malachi sort of rotating in. And next year, maybe that's the case next year where they're queuing it up where you don't have to go find a centerpiece next year. I still think they probably will. But that's having that second option already there on campus, especially one who can do the things you want by stretching the floor out. I don't have the splits exactly in front of me, but I think he was like 31 of 60 from 3, something similar to that. Which
I can tell you right now if you want.
Because
22
that's
of 60.
Okay, I mean, still that's 33%. I'm bad at math, but I think that's close enough. So that's a solid, a decent start, and he's a hometown kid. So there we go. Not too shabby for a guy that you had no idea was going to be on the roster, and you probably won't notice on the bench next year.
Well, and if you're like me and you hear all these numbers, hear what he did in his first 2 years at Miami, it kind of helps to know what other schools were going after him, kind of play the name game that way. And so according to Matt, North Carolina, Washington, Louisville, and UConn were among the schools that reached out. And Washington made Potter a substantial offer. Those are not my words. So those are Matt's sources. So and that Hubert Davis supposedly made getting Potter a priority for his program. So, I mean, we're talking about him as a 13th player depth piece, but there has to be some upside there if both Washington and UNC are like actually legitimately going after him. So it'll be interesting. It's always fun to start a week with the Kentucky basketball edition. And we're losing one Kentucky boy, Travis Perry, to Ole Miss, but we've gained one in Reece Potter. So, and if you love Harry Potter, you can get a Kentucky basketball jersey with Potter on the back.
Ooh,
that's both worlds.
we should do the Patrick Tolles Cat's Paws cover.
Yeah, bring it back, run it back. I love that. So we've talked about that. I'm sure we'll be breaking that down for days to come on KSR. We'll have more videos and stuff about Reece Potter. But